Hello and welcome, beautiful people. This is Marco Narrates, where I surprisingly narrate, and in this particular video, I will finally be continuing my readings of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien with the opening of the second chapter. If that sounds interesting to you, and you want to follow from the beginning, see the description for links to my previous videos covering the first chapter of the book. In today's excerpt of Chapter 2, we follow a flustered Bilbo Baggins who busies himself cleaning up after his unexpected guests. Before Bilbo can enjoy second breakfast, he is suddenly rushed out by Gandalf the Grey to meet Thorin and his company of dwarves. Though hesitant and unprepared to start, the hobbit runs out to meet up with the dwarves and fulfill his promise of aid, finally embarking on an adventure in earnest. Up jumped Bilbo, and putting on his dressing gown, went into the dining room. There he saw nobody, but all the signs of a large and hurried breakfast. There was a fearful mess in the room, and piles of unwashed crocks in the kitchen. Nearly every pot and pan he possessed seemed to have been used. The washing up was so dismally real that Bilbo was forced to believe the party of the night before had not been part of his bad dreams, as he had rather hoped. Indeed, he was really relieved, after all, to think that they had all gone without him, and without bothering to wake him up. But with never a thank you, he thought, and yet in a way he could not help feeling just a trifle disappointed. The feeling surprised him.
"Don't be a fool, Bilbo Baggins,"
he said to himself.
"Thinking about dragons and all that outlandish nonsense at your age."
So he put on an apron, lit fires, boiled water, and washed up. Then he had a nice little breakfast in the kitchen before turning out the dining room. By that time, the sun was shining, and the front door was open, letting in a warm spring breeze. Bilbo began to whistle loudly and to forget about the night before. In fact, he was just sitting down to a nice little second breakfast in the dining room by the open window when in walked Gandalf.
"My dear fellow,"
said he,
"whenever are you going to come? What about an early start? And here you are having breakfast, or whatever you call it, at 10:30. They left you the message because they could not wait."
"What message?"
said poor Mr. Baggins, all in a fluster.
"Great elephants,"
said Gandalf.
"You are not at all yourself this morning. You have never dusted the mantelpiece."
"What's that got to do with it? I've had enough to do with washing up for 14.
"If you had dusted the mantelpiece, you would have found this just under the clock,"
said Gandalf, handing Bilbo a note, written, of course, on his own notepaper. This is what it read. Thorin and Company to Burglar Bilbo greeting. For your hospitality, our sincerest thanks, and for your offer of professional assistance, our grateful acceptance. Terms: cash on delivery, up to and not exceeding 1/14 of total profits, if any. All traveling expenses guaranteed in any event. Funeral expenses are to be defrayed by us or our representatives if occasion arises and the matter is not otherwise arranged for. Thinking it unnecessary to disturb your esteemed repose, we have proceeded in advance to make requisite preparations, and shall await your respected person at the Green Dragon Inn, Bywater, at 11 a.m. sharp, trusting that you will be punctual. We have the honor to remain, yours deeply, Thorin and Company.
"That leaves you just 10 minutes. You will have to run,"
said Gandalf.
"But,"
said Bilbo.
"No time for it,"
said the wizard.
"But,"
said Bilbo again.
"No time for that either. Off you go."
To the end of his days, Bilbo could never remember how he found himself outside, without a hat, a walking stick, or any money, or anything he usually took when he went out, leaving his second breakfast half finished and quite unwashed up, pushing his keys into Gandalf's hands, and running as fast as his furry feet could carry him down the lane, past the great mill, across the water, and then on for a mile or more. Very puffed he was when he got to Bywater just on the stroke of 11, and found he had come without a pocket handkerchief.
"Bravo!"
said Balin, who was standing at the inn door looking out for him. Just then all the others came around the corner of the road from the village. They were on ponies, and each pony was slung about with all kinds of baggages, packages, parcels, and paraphernalia. There was a very small pony, apparently for Bilbo.
"Up you two get, and off we go,"
said Thorin.
"I'm awfully sorry,"
said Bilbo.
"but I have come without my hat, and I have left my pocket handkerchief behind, and I haven't got any money. I didn't get your note until after 10:45 to be precise."
"Don't be precise," said Dwalin. "And don't worry. You will have to manage without pocket handkerchiefs and a good many other things before you get to the journey's end. As for a hat, I have got a spare hood and cloak in my luggage." That's how they all came to start, jogging off from the inn one fine morning just before May, on laden ponies, and Bilbo was wearing a dark green hood, a little weather-stained, and a dark green cloak from Dwalin. They were too large for him, and he looked rather comic. What his father Bungo would have thought of him, I daren't think. His only comfort was he couldn't be mistaken for a dwarf, as he had no beard. They had not been riding very long when up came Gandalf, very splendid on a white horse. He had brought a lot of pocket handkerchiefs, and Bilbo's pipe and tobacco. So after that the party went along very merrily, and they told stories or sang songs as they rode forward all day, except of course when they stopped for meals. These didn't come quite as often as Bilbo would have liked them, but still, he began to feel that adventures were not so bad after all. And just like that, Bilbo was on his way with the dwarves. Sadly, at the expense of a wasted second breakfast. But there is yet worse and better for Mr. Baggins to experience on his first adventure. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, and you're interested in hearing the remainder of this chapter, as well as future readings of The Hobbit, then consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. While you're at it, check out my previous readings linked both here on the screen and in the description. If you're generally interested in fantasy, then also consider listening to my narrations of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, or watching my Elder Scrolls videos if that interest extends to video games. Thanks again for listening, and remember to grab a pocket handkerchief on your way out.